Joining us right now, that's, again, the backdrop of the NCAA tournament that's about to get its brackets in all of our hands on Sunday from the worldwide leader in sports, one of the best in the business, one of my favorite people to talk to, Jay Bilas. How are you, Jay?
I'm doing great, Rich. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. What is your thoughts on the subject about clearly what the Ivy League executive director Robin Harris did, and now schools are apparently taking into their own hands about decisions on whether to hold games with fans or not at all? What are your thoughts here, Jay?
Well, oddly enough, I went to law school with Robin, so I know her. She's fantastic, and she's representing all the presidents who came to that joint decision about the Ivy League tournament. And there are only 4 teams in the Ivy League tournament, but it's on campus at Harvard this year. So I know how painful a decision that was for everybody involved to sort of cancel that competition. But, we're seeing schools all over the country now that are essentially canceling their classes and telling their students don't come back from spring break. I know Duke, where I went to school, has told students not to come back until at least April the 20th. And that's happened with at least 3 Ivy League schools. I think you were mentioning Rutgers now is taking some steps. So it's going on all over the country, and really, this is a healthcare issue, and it's a public health issue. So trying to flatten the curve of this coronavirus so that it doesn't overwhelm the healthcare system, and so it seems inevitable that it's going to reach the NCAA tournament. And it's not just the men's tournament. Like the women's tournament is being played going to be played at the same time. Mm-hmm. And the women's tournament is played on campus sites to begin. So Stanford's already said they're allowing limited spectators at events, and certainly that's going to have to affect the women's tournament. And then the optics of it for the NCAA as to can they do what did they do? They can't. It's almost like they can't let everyone else take these measures, and then all of a sudden, but 75,000 people come in and watch us. That's going to look a little odd.
Well, I mean, again, you're a basketball analyst with a remarkable legal background, as we heard from you many times. So you're not an expert on public health, and I don't mean to put you in the position of being one. That said, do you know what the machinations or the decision-making process with the NCAA would be to make a decision so monumental with the first 4 happening in a state where the governor said don't do it, or they're asking, they're not demanding, and then there's a first-round series, I think, in both men and women in the state of Ohio as well, first and second round. Do you know what the decision-making process is actually behind the scenes on this front, Jay?
Well, they have a panel that they've put together to give them advice within the health professional field, and they're in contact with the CDC and other organizations to give them advice. The statement that the NCAA put out, and again, there's a difference in this regard between the NCAA office in Indianapolis, Mark Emmert and all his employees, and the conferences. So, like I'm at the ACC tournament right now. The NCAA has no say over how the ACC runs its tournament. If the ACC decides to allow spectators, not allow spectators, that's not Mark Emmert's call. The NCAA tournament is his call. And so as to how that tournament is conducted, that's going to be the call of the office in Indianapolis, with input from the membership, obviously. But they've got a panel of healthcare experts, and then they've got their own healthcare experts that are employed by the NCAA. And the statement they put out yesterday, that Mark Emmert put out yesterday in the NCAA, suggested that no one has told them that they cannot have competition, that they have not been advised that they cannot hold competition. That obviously doesn't speak to whether they should, whether it's prudent to do so. But I think they're going to handle this well. I'm optimistic that they're smart enough and they have the advice, and they're going to take all appropriate steps. Like, this is different from should they pay the players or all this other stuff, and their policies in other areas, which I think I do not trust them with. This I do trust them with. I don't think they're going to make any public health decision that's not going to be in the best interest of everyone involved, and it's not going to be made with deliberate speed and be prudential. So I trust them to do that. In the long run, though, Rich, with the way this is trending, the next step would be limited access of fans. And because, it seems with the way everything's going with different companies that I've been aware of and different governments and all that having these events, unless something changes, it seems to be trending toward the next step being limited access of fans, and we don't want to have that many people in one place that are likely to go back to widespread areas. It seems like they're trending away from that sort of thing for the time being.
Jay Bilas from ESPN here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, so now that we've discussed that, I guess let's get to the matter at hand and how you think the seeding is going to go at the very top once we get these brackets in our hands on Sunday as we're sitting here on Wednesday. Jay?
Kansas and Gonzaga are clear number ones. I think Baylor is up there, and if they get to the final of the Big 12, they will stay there. And then I think Dayton has jumped San Diego State. I think the only things that could change would be based upon if Florida State were to rip through and win the ACC. Maybe they could jump up there. Duke would be a possibility, but and then Michigan State, I think if they were to win, they could do that. But outside of the top seeds as they stand now in all these different bracketologies that you see, I don't see a whole lot of teams jumping up there. There has been outside of, like I mentioned, Kansas, which has lost 3 times and have only lost to high-level opponents. Gonzaga's only lost a couple of times. Baylor's only lost 4. Dayton, I think, will grab a number 1 seed if they win the A-10 tournament. They've only lost twice, and they lost to Kansas and Colorado, both of those in overtime. Everybody else has a lot more losses and a lot more blemishes, and it's hard to see a bunch of teams with the opportunity to leapfrog those that are already there.
Well, obviously Dayton's the one with if you can have a team that's won 29 of 31 wearing a glass slipper, they'd have to be that one, or obviously San Diego State at 30-2. Do they have the ability, do you think, to cut down the nets when it's all done, like take it all down when it's said and done, Jay?
I think so. I think Dayton does, and I think both of them are Final Four capable. Obviously a team's ability to get to the Final Four, there's a lot wider swath of teams that can navigate 4 games in a bracket where somebody falls down in front of them, something like that. Winning 6 is a lot different. And I think there are only 8, maybe 9 teams that I favor to do that. It doesn't mean it's impossible that you can't see somebody like Butler break through and do it like they almost did in 2010. But it's a lot bigger task. But both of them, especially Dayton, I think, because Dayton's got they got a National Player of the Year candidate. I think he's going to be National Player of the Year, and Obi Toppin. He's a lottery pick, but they've also got older players, and they've got everything I think you need. The only issue that you would have is to say, well, geez, they haven't who have they beaten? Like the best team they've beaten, or the highest ranked team, is probably St. Mary's. They beat Georgia, but Georgia's not that great. They beat Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's not that great. Their best win was probably their loss against Kansas. That was their best performance. They were magnificent in that game. They lost in overtime to Kansas in Maui, which is one of the 5 best games I think that was played this year as far as level of play, and the 2 heavyweights taking a swing at one another. But they're legit. They're very, very good. But you know how it is, Rich. If they lose in the Sweet 16,
right?
People dismiss them and say, "Oh, I told you they weren't that good." Stuff like that.
Who's on the bubble for you, Jay? Who needs to have a big conference tournament week in order to get in?
There are a bunch of them. I think Stanford has to win. Indiana has to win. I think Providence is going to make it into the field because of how they finished up, but I wouldn't go losing in the Big East tournament if I were them. I think teams like Cincinnati, Richmond, those teams have to win. But outside of that, I think it's I don't want to say it's fairly clear, but there's not a lot of wiggle room for teams to break through, to sort of break through. There are a couple that can fall out, but there's probably 8 teams that are competing, and they've got really spotty resumes. I mean, to the point of being average teams. And, I think one of the things that's kind of interesting about this is, there are, when you look at this event, like this is the national championship event. And, man, when people say it's not fair to the little guy, I always kind of push back on that and say, hey, look, it may be more difficult for the little guy, but it's ridiculously fair. And because the little guy gets to win their conference tournament and get in, and then they have the opportunity to get in as an at-large and without playing as tough a schedule. So I think it's really fair.
All right, Squirt, let me just walk in through the front door. What about my alma mater, Jay? Does Michigan and Juwan Howard have to come up with the W's, plural, in the Big Ten tournament in order to make it? What do you think?
I don't think so. I wouldn't recommend to anybody losing, but I think Michigan's going to make it in because of the quality of win they have and the fact that Isaiah Livers was out for so long. That gives them a little bit of wiggle room there, at least some argument that, hey, wait a minute, we didn't have our best player for this length of time, and when he went out, we were being touted as a top 5 team, and they actually were ranked, I think, 4th when he went out. With him healthy and their whole team healthy, they're top 25 good. So I can't imagine a scenario absent, looking horrible in the Big Ten tournament where they don't make it.
What about the blue blood of UCLA out here, losing on a buzzer beater to USC? They're both in the other receiving vote column right now with just single digits. What do you got for me on that front, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think the polls mean anything.
Okay.
So you can be just outside the top 25, and people thinking, hey, man, they're trending up to be one of the better teams, but your overall resume isn't very good. Like UCLA's metrics aren't great. And we've had teams in the past that have, done well in the Pac-12. Washington, when Lorenzo Romar was there, they won the Pac-12 one year, didn't get in when they didn't win the tournament. And I think we could see a similar thing with UCLA if they don't perform well in the Pac-12 tournament. That they've got a ton of losses. And I think they've lost 12, maybe 13 games. They've won 18 or 19. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, now Hofstra just made the tournament, which is one of their losses. And they lost to Cal State Fullerton. North Carolina beat them. And they've lost to some of the teams, but most of their losses within the conference have been pretty good. So I think they're in decent shape, but I wouldn't feel comfortable. I think they should. I think they should win a game or two in the Pac-12 tournament, or they can get pushed out.
A few more minutes left with Jay Bilas from ESPN here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'd love to get your thoughts on what happened to John Beilein with the Cavs, and if you think that there's any cautionary tale in there, or this is just an outlier of a top-notch, big-time college coach going to the NBA, and it being just a bad fit. Is there a moral to this story otherwise, do you think?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. Rich, I'm not one of those that says, well, college coaches need to serve as an assistant in the NBA. They don't know the league and all that stuff. Like, Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan got in the league and done just fine. The difference is they went to good teams that had a chance, that had good players that had a chance to win. And, I can give you a long list of guys with solely NBA experience that have been miserable failures in the league because they take bad jobs. And John took a bad job, and one where it was going to take a long time to turn around. I can tell you, I don't buy this business about losing tore him up and all that stuff. I mean, hands up all those who love losing. Mm-hmm. But if you took that job without understanding that you were going to lose a lot, then you were painfully naive. John made some mistakes. One of them, pretty big one. And I don't think handled it very well, and he lost his credibility. And so whether he got burned out as a result of it, I haven't talked to him, but I don't know what he's a great guy, and I think he's a great coach. I think if he had taken a better job, it would have worked out for him a lot better. But ifs and buts, you know how that goes.
Yep.
But I'm hopeful that he'll get back into coaching on the college level. I just don't know whether he wants to retire straight out, whether he wants to move his wife again, what he wants to do going forward. I haven't talked to him.
Right. And then the last one for you. What'd you make of Archie Miller's comments about Sesame Street and bracketology and all that business? And Lenardi? What'd you make of that one, Jim?
Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this, but I'm one of those that says, we in sports media, we get to say whatever we want. And I think the coaches and the players have the exact same right. So come after us and say whether you think we're good or bad. Go at it. But when you do, you gotta live with how people are gonna process it. And I like Archie Miller. I think he's a good guy, but I thought he looked rather silly doing that. Like, bracketology is entertainment. Like, Joe Lunardi and Jerry Palm and all these guys that do that, it's entertaining. And they don't have any say in what the committee does, and they don't have any say in who wins or loses games. Just like if I say, hey, I think Michigan's the best team in the Big Ten, I think they're going to win the Big Ten tournament. I don't, but if I said that, well, that's not going to stop Michigan State and Minnesota and Ohio State from winning their games. So I thought he looked foolish and in doing that, and I thought he looked like he was trying to evade the fact that his team's not very good right now. And Archie's usually a stand-up guy. I was really surprised by that. But if I were him, I would call Joe and say, "Hey, man, sorry about that." And Joe's fine. I've interacted with him by email. He's not worried about it. He's still in his bunker. But he doesn't need anybody's help. But I thought Archie looked kind of silly.
I think he's in his street, though, right? Not his bunker. He's on his in his trash can in his street. Is what it sounds like to me. That reference.
Yes, but I was wondering if it's Sesame Street. What does that make me? Am I like the Count, or am I Big Bird, or am I Ernie or Bert?
Yeah, I think you're Big Bird. I'm Guy Smiley. I'm the game show host. That's the way I'm going to go.
Well, I was hoping it would take me more toward the Muppets, and I could be one of those guys up in the balcony, because that's what I'm most comfortable with.
By the way, I would love to be Stadler to your Waldorf, sir, any day of the week.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes, for sure. All right, ask him the question before he goes, Chris. You just love doing this.
I do. It's my favorite part. Jay, so we have a running bit here the last week or so about Rich's Uber rating. It's terrible. It's a 4.54. Do you know your Uber rating?
Oh yeah, I'm a 5. I get because I not only tip them on the app, I give them cash afterwards.
Oh, a double tipper!
Yeah, you're a double tipper.
I'm a double tipper because, well, first of all, I get a lot of sob stories from Uber drivers, but
right.
I can't believe how cheap. I just can't believe how cheap that is. Like, there are two things I tip above what I should, or at least what seems to be required. And that is Uber and DoorDash. Like, to have somebody bring something to my door and walk away with $5, I think is obscene. So I tip on the app, and then I tip in person.
All right, Jay. Not that I don't believe you. Again, you're above repute, but I would like a screen grab of it, please. Text it to me.
Yeah, we want to see that 5.
We want to see it. We need receipts.
I'll shoot it to you. Yeah, I'll shoot it to you.
Yeah, shoot it to me as soon as you hang up, and we'll put it on. We'll put it on our show.
Amazing.
But that's inflated. Clearly, you're going to be 5-0 if
I've done that a couple times too.
If you're pressing dollar bills into somebody's hand, Jay.
I do that,
man.
Occasionally,
whatever it takes.
You're gaming the system.
No, I'm not. I could call a car service like you most of the time, but if I'm going to do Uber, I'm going to treat them like a car service driver.
All right, Jay. By the way,
respect.
I also don't leave my Taco Bell in the back. That might be your problem.
Take care of yourself, Jay. Let's chat soon. We'll chat during the tournament, hopefully.
See you, brother.
All right, here you go. That's Jay Bilas.